Nyaweskano swagwego. Ne wai jojeto. Ne neo te no no hoje nokta on hejohi. Ne wai de on gwada wen ye ha hanwe yo enza ge nengan when is hade dane honeo down kongwani going. And dane hoko. Ne wai ne da ju and gada da chowi. Ne so zizo wa ni gya so ne on gwen we ka. Ne ton the one day on the walk got ni wa going zo there. Ne wai ne genya de haikwa. Do guess ne ho de wa gek sat da ye on tayoni. Ne ga jaun yani ne on the walk got go an out how we ton the one day. De wa ken tasto haikwa. Ne wai ne on go es ha east waits a swada jat dinyo don nengen when is hade scan out idwe swano donyo. Ne aso odiwa tanjo ni go went on hoje nokta on hejohi. And ne hoko ne wai ne and gas ha went ne and gachunyano do digwa ne a gadeston je. Nandana o ne ni gaje ha. How we ton the one day, Dane honeo down kongwani going. So just a little intro. So Zitzowa is my name. So Zitzowa. Damian Webster, like he said, he gave me the intro there, board member. It's good to be here. I just said it, I'm really happy to see everybody here, that you all brought yourselves out here today. Also just listening to the presenters this morning and the ones that are to come. I gave thanks that everything is still going on the way that the Creator made up his mind for us to have. So we all have our own original instructions wherever we come from. And all of you sitting in this room are a continuation of that just by being here. We have first language speakers in the room. We have second language learners. Everybody's here for the language, and you're a continuation of something that the Creator made up for us a long time ago. So that's what I said. It's still going on. Up to the present day. So I gave thanks and acknowledged for that. It's good to be back here in New Mexico. I'm not unfamiliar to this place. I graduated up the road at Santa Fe Indian School in 1993, home of the Braves. So I went to school there. They still had the old campus at the time. And then I went on to work there from 2002 to 2010 with professional development for the Pueblo Day Schools, and then moving into the academic part of working with special ed, mathematics, you name it. They threw me anywhere they needed me. Answered phones, substituted, coached basketball, boys and girls. So formed relationships with people. So now I only come back like once a year for this symposium. And my tolerance for green chili is not what it used to be. First thing I went for was a green chili cheeseburger yesterday. Oh man, that cheeseburger showed me who was boss right away. But it was really good. So it's good to be back. Good to see familiar faces out here. I have a friend here from University of North Dakota when I used to go to school out there. And I don't think I've seen him since I left back in 2014. So 10 years I haven't seen him, and so much stuff has happened in both of our lives just in those past 10 years. So it's been really good to be here. So I'm gonna get started here a little bit. I'm kind of glad we ran in a little behind. It doesn't mean I don't have to talk too long, but I'm gonna try my best to do what I can with this, with what I have. So I'm gonna talk about keeping language learning simple. So in languages, we all come from different languages, different language families. We have all these different aspects of our language. And I network with a lot of people. I try to work with a lot of people. Even if I've never met you, if you have videos online, I probably found a way to watch some of your language videos and kind of try to catch on to what you're doing as far as how do you teach concepts, all that stuff. So one of the presenters that's going to be here, well, he's here now, but he's going to present later, is Hune Lance Twitchell. Dr. Lance Twitchell is going to present. I've been listening to his classes since the pandemic started online. and they're really good classes. It's really crazy how the parallels of Tlingit language and Haudenosaunee languages have a lot of parallels. And I get that every time I listen to his classes. And a matter of fact, there was a new one popped up on my feed last night. He already rolled in here and taught a class in his hotel room and posted it online. So that's how dedicated he is. So one of the things he talks about in his classes is classifiers. They have these classifiers in their language. And I know more recent one he talked about was changing something to, if you put this certain classifier, I think it was an L classifier, it makes something living or alive. So he talks about that's one of the things he talks about in his language. I have a lot of friends who study Ojibwe, teach Ojibwe, learning Ojibwe, Anishinaabemowin. And one of the things they talk about is stuff that's animate and inanimate. So if you're holding something, if you're going to buy something, oh, that's animate, that's inanimate. You don't think this is animate, but it is animate. That's actually inanimate. And I just visited my friend. She just called me before I came out here. And we were talking about that. She said one of her teachers is going to resign. But she said he was always really, really technical. I said, I can tell he was technical because when you talk about your language, you get so technical about how you explain your language to me. So that's an aspect not only of just Anishinaabemowin, but I'm sure a lot of other ones too. I watched a documentary a while ago on the Cherokee language. So they're in the Iroquoian language family, just like Seneca. And they talked about, so we have this word, there's this little quick command we can say, ho'sego. Ho'sego is just like, go get it, go and get it. So they have ho'sego too. It's a different word, but they have these things that get attached to it. So they say, well, we can't just tell you to go and get it. Go and get it if it's a liquid. If it's a liquid, we got to modify that word. If it's a bendable object, that goes into the word to go and get it. If it's a solid thing, that it goes into the go and get it, you know. And then if it's something that's animate, that also goes into the word. So you can't just say go and get it. So a lot of like aspects of their language. Next up, some languages have future tense, past tense. We have optative, which is like would, could, and should. Other languages don't necessarily have a future tense or a past tense. It will be marked by the timestamp, right? If you're talking about yesterday, then we know that that verb is a past tense. If we're talking about tonight or next week, that already denotes that it's a future tense without actually being a future tense. So even in Mandarin, we did a workshop with a Mandarin lady who does immersion, and that's what she was talking about. She was saying in Mandarin, we just say like, I eat. But she's like, yesterday I eat. Like literally that's what it says, but you'd switch it to I ate yesterday, right? Tomorrow I eat. But tomorrow I'm gonna eat. So you have tenses, some people have them, some people don't. Directionals, locatives, locatives, whatever you want to call those things matter. So in Hune's class, there's one thing where he was talking about the beach, and they were going over words for the beach because they're a canoe culture, and he was saying there's a and coming into the house. So there's this thing going on right now. It's this big narrative that they tell for 4 days in our communities. And the guy who's in charge, when they're ready to go in the morning, he calls everybody into the longhouse. He says, Daswayo, Daswayo. He's telling everybody, all of you, come inside. So that's a basic too. Like you can say it just like if somebody knocks at your door, you can say, Dadzo, Dadzo, come inside. But we were talking about how you should say that from at least in the doorway, because then you're still in the house. That's saying, I'm standing in the doorway, so I'm still in the house. Daswayo, everybody come in. If I'm standing outside of the door and I say, da suayo, I'm not inside anything. So that matters, right? If I'm outside, I have to say, hey, suayo, you all go inside because I'm outside with you, right? Those little things matter. So you have locatives that come in people's languages too. One of my good friends is here. He's doing a poster presentation. Make sure to go check it out today. A little plug for him. Lakota. I need to take that Lakota off of my bio because I took a class for a semester at UND, but that profile makes it seems like I study Lakota every day, and I know some words and little phrases and stuff, but my daughters are Dakota as well. Their mom is her dad is from Sisseton, South Dakota, Sissetuong, and so she taught them some words too. So I'm aware of that realm. But anyways, they have gender-specific things in their language where if you're a male, you say it this way. If you're a female, you say it this other way at times. And I'm going to talk about like stress marks. If you stress the word in a certain part and you don't stress it somewhere else, you can change the meaning. So I think anybody who speaks Dene here can say like you can alter a word if you don't put the stress in the right spot at times. So we have those aspects of our language as well. And then I have friends who are Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. They have positional things where like they'll give you a greeting, how are you doing, as you're sitting there? How are you doing as you're standing? How are you doing as you're lying down? Those things all factor into play. You can't just say, how are you doing? You pay attention to their body position. So when we talk about these things, these are like a lot of things to consider. Like every single one of our languages have all these intricacies that we can talk about. And I think if you're going to teach your language, you should familiarize yourself with the intricacies, not only the intricacies of your language, but how to articulate what those actually are. And so the title was Keep It Simple. And my teacher, he was a very technical teacher. But the more I caught on to his technicalities, the more I could kind of water it down to make it digestible for other people. So sometimes, like, if some of you have a grammar book for your language, that linguist goes to town on how he explains all your things work in your language, right? Like, you need a PhD just to read the intro to that book, you know? But what you want to do is you want to make it accessible. You want people to understand how it works. And that's what I do, is I try to take all these things about our language and just make it simple and just use it. So I have a picture here of my friend, Hoyat Danagwit. He's one of the most Senecas I ever know. So this is my teacher. He's younger than me, but he knows a lot. He learned a lot from his great-grandma. And he's a cultural custodian for our nation. And he's well-traveled. So I learned a lot from him. So I couldn't figure out. I'm a last-minute guy. I got called in to replace. So I meant to say, too, Migazi, I'm bummed he's not here because I saw him talk online. I wanted to meet him and see what so I got big shoes to fill. So this is all what I could come up with here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the complexities of Onundawat Gawano, our language. Just a couple things. There's so much I could cover, but I got to draw the line somewhere. We have syllable count words. So I learned that just because I say syllable doesn't mean my students know what a syllable is. So don't assume that students know what that means when you say that, right? So syllable is just like how many utterances are in a word, right? So calculator, right? That's like 4 syllables, right? That's a syllable. I didn't realize I actually have to explain that to my students. And you guys probably ask this. You probably ask your students when you're teaching them, do you understand? And what do? They nod their head yes. And then you ask them about something and they don't know. Now they're a deer in headlights, right? You said you understood. So that's a loaded question. Like, you're kind of setting yourself up if you ask, do you understand? Pre-pronominals, these come before. So we have prefixes in the front of the word. Our words can't stand alone. Somebody has to be doing the action. Somebody has to be cooking. Somebody has to be running. Somebody has to be remembering. I'm remembering. He remembers. They all remember. Somebody, that's our prefix, right? But then sometimes we have something that comes in front of it. And these kind of get leveled up, like, oh, let's wait to teach these because they have these big names in front of them. Duplicatives and partitives and translocative verbs, like, but they're also just everyday verbs that you have to use. So one of the dummied down ways we call it is a duplicative. We just call it a day verb. Partitives, they usually start with ni, so we call them ni verbs. Translocatives usually start with hey, so we call those hey verbs. And you go through and you use them and you show them how to do it. And we'll get into that a little bit. Plug and play versus blending. Rules. So my teacher he was very technical in how he explained how things worked. And definitely, like, it sunk in my head the way he explained it. But then when I moved into teaching, I can't take all that time to do all that explaining. I think sometimes we think that just because we're up there and doing an activity that we're being productive and we're filling a time slot. Whether you have a half-hour time slot with your students or an hour and a half, whatever your time slot is, there's sometimes these little things where we think we're being productive and really we're just kind of like talking at them. I think a question I had to have with myself was, am I producing new speakers, right? So all of you teachers out here right now, like, you should ask yourself that question. Are you producing new speakers in your community? Or are you just covering materials? I worked with a speaker one time, and one of his students was with us that time, and I said, oh, I forgot to ask him. I was going to ask him how many speakers he's helped create in the 20 years he's been teaching. She said, don't ask him that. Don't ask him that. I said, why? She goes, because the number is 0. He hasn't produced any speakers in the 20 years he's been teaching. Now, he's a first language speaker, but he did a lot of repeat after me, turn to page 20, we're going to do this sentence, and you're covering topics in your language, but it's not necessarily giving somebody the skill to create and interact in the language on their own. And so I had to look in the mirror too, because it's easy to point the finger and say, you're not producing and you're not doing this. And I had to turn the mirror on myself and say, well, how many speakers have I produced as a teacher? And I was right there with that guy of 20 years. I was at 0 speakers that I produced as well. So I had work to do. So we have things like plug and play where things, and I'll go into that a little bit too, but one of the rules he used to say was like, the male prefixes usually start with the letter H. But when stuff comes before that, the H is between 2 vowels, so you got to drop the vowel out, and then you move on, and that was the explanation we always went with. And we all became good little soldiers behind him, and whenever anybody asked us, we would explain it just the same way he explained it to us, you know. But when I started teaching, I was like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way than me explaining this whole rule set every time. Question intonations and placement stress. So all of you have ways to ask questions in your language. So I'll go back to my days in Santa Fe, at Santa Fe Indian School. A lot of those kids are first language, like Karis, Towa, Tiwa, Dene. That's their first language. And English is their second language. So I only knew English at that time, really, when I was working with them. But I remember I used to say something to them, and they would say, like in English we go, really? But all those Pueblo kids, they would go, really? Really? And I started taking that home, and I would go, really? You know? So it wasn't until years later that I started really coming familiar with my language, and I thought, you know what? I bet that's the way they say really in their language when they say that. That's how they say it. And because the Pueblo language is their first language, it's going to overlay their English, right? So that's the way they say it, really. That's how they go. Now, a lot of us in your communities are probably dominated by first language English speakers these days, right? So it stands to reason that the way they intonate their English is going to be the way they intonate their Anishinaabe, the way they talk their Keres. They're going to say it with like these English tones. Just by show of hands, how many of you like to watch subtitled movies, shows? We got a little bit. So the rest of the crowd is like, I hate reading at the bottom. I'm going to miss what's happening on the screen. So the cool thing about subtitled movies is you get to hear it the way it was meant to be delivered. So I don't know when we started, but I watched a lot of subtitled movies, and my daughters would watch them with me, and they just got used to like being able to read and see what's going on with the show. So one of the movies we watched a while back was Kung Fu Hustle. That's a really funny movie if you've never seen that one. So we always watched it it's in Cantonese. So, we read the subtitles and stuff, and lately I always thought, man, what if we translated Kung Fu Hustle into Seneca or, Ojibwe or whatever, But every now and then, it came out on Netflix one time, but the Netflix version was the English version. And you can hear like the intonations that they're trying to communicate the things from Cantonese in English. None of the jokes land. None of the humor is the same. We also watched this anime called One Punch Man. That was all in Japanese. And then the girls found a clip on YouTube and they were like, oh, it was in English, like he's this real nonchalant hero. But his nonchalantness in English it's like terrible. It's the corniest show in the world if you watch it in English. So learn to appreciate subtitled movies. So when we talk about intonations, that's how they say it. Do you understand? Sa nigoyen dats. Are you done eating? Sa quen daon. Versus sa quen daon. You really start to hear the differences in when you're laying your English intonations over the way it is. And it's also really overlooked because your students are really trying to make sure they pronounce their consonants and their vowels and all your clusters, and making sure they put it to where it's supposed to be associated to what the term they're trying to use. Intonations kind of get lost in the shuffle. They did for me. I didn't figure those out till about 4 years ago, that those actually exist. But I'll tell you what, we do that right away with our new students, and they pick up on it. I give them really good input on how to use those intonations, and when they ask yes/no questions, they start to use those intonations too. So I make it part of the class. But I can't teach that if I don't know that too. Like if I don't use those intonations, I sure as heck can't teach them. So I always have to be advancing myself as a teacher. Trimming the fat, unnecessary English. I'll get more into this in a minute here in my slides. So I'll talk about this real quick. Here's a syllable count word. So the top up there, we have 15 different pronouns, right? So In the single column on the left side, it's me, you, him, her, and it. And in that middle column, that's a dual column, so that's always like two people. It's me and you two, two males, two females, and then me and someone. And then that third column is the plural column, usually three or more. All of us, all of you, all of them, males or a mixed group, all of them, females, and then the other one is like me and them. It's us, but it's a different kind of us, okay? So this word is to just feel okay, to be all right. Gadongwe ta. Gadongwe ta. So gadongwe ta. Can you say that? Gadongwe ta. That's just, I feel good. I feel good. So you go down the line, right? And this is a syllable count word. So this is the way we used to do, the way I was taught syllable count words was, okay, gadongwe ta. Okay? Ska dekni se ge. It's 4 syllables, right? Is that even or odd? It's even. So do you lengthen or no lengthen? No lengthen. All right? So that's what we learned, like in general. If it's even, you don't lengthen. If it's odd, you add a lengthen, right? This is the whole, like some of you are probably like, what are you talking about? All right? And that's how it goes sometimes when you're teaching. We used to do that for every word. Count them, ask if they're even or odd, and then determine if we lengthen or don't lengthen. And I was like, God, there's got to be a better way. So we go down that whole first column. They're all adongwe ta for everything. You go down the start of that second column, it's all adongwe ta. Until you get to the bottom. Agyadongwe ta. Agyadongwe ta. And when we get to this other plural column, henondongwe ta. Wenondongwe ta. And the other one, agwadongwe ta. So when I listen to the speakers do something like this on like a language track, number one, they're not counting syllables at all. They do not care about any syllable count at all. They grew up hearing the language, and through all the amount of input they got, they know when to lengthen and they know when not to lengthen. They just know how to do it, right? But if you count the syllables of what they said, they're spot on every time. Like 99% of the time, they're spot on how to use it. So I try to teach cadence. Cadence, you learn that, agwadongwe ta. You learn the cadence of that word, and that's what sticks in your head. But also, if you're only going to do conjugations of the word, then that's going to help you when they have to take a conjugation test. That's not going to help them when they actually have to do talking. So you have to initiate that as well. So there, right? Did I put that right? It's supposed to be when on the no ta right here. So ne on get hik. I made a mistake, right? That should say when on the no ta. Ne on guadio so on ne ho oake, right? My dad is a singer at Akron, but my friends are singers in Pembroke. And then you rearrange your thoughts a little bit, but that's what that means. So I'm going to teach hadenota in this and wenondenota in there, even though it says the different word, right? I'm going to put it in a sentence, and I'm going to use a lot of sentences so they get to learn the rhythm of that word through the sentences, not just conjugations, all right? Here's another one here, just another short sentence. Do ondongwe ta ne aksod, negan go to winyo say. My grandma doesn't feel good. She has a cold, all right? So there it is. We have yondongwe ta. She feels good, but I negated it. Do ondongwe ta. And I just teach them the sound. We don't count syllables in my class. I lightly tell them if you need to know a word, count the syllables, but we don't harp on that too long with the technicalities. Plug and play and blending words. So these are some things I used. A singer here. Gadenota, I'm a singer. Sadenota, you're a singer. Hadenota, he sings. Yondenota, she sings. Wadenota is like a radio. or nowadays like a Bluetooth speaker. So some of your words will rotate into like stuff that's new today, right? The second column there, I'm negating. So most of the time if you want to negate, you use date. Date. So you can see like the first two, all I got to do is plug in the date. And the G and the S, I don't have to mess with them. I just put slap date on. I mean, I guess I got to do a syllable count, make sure to lengthen the word. But I just plug those dates in, all right? But when I get to this third one, hadenota, it's not date hadenota. Now it's da denota or deadenota, right? So that one I can't plug and play. The date and the ha, they blend together. And there's a whole big old explanation that people use to say why you do that, right? And I was like, no, I'm not going to do the big explanation. I'm just going to show you how to negate it for the male. The female one, yondenota. The Y falls off, right? Do ondenota. And there's vowel matching in there. I don't talk about vowel matching. It's in there, but I don't talk about it. We just use it. And then wadenota. That one is that's a plug and play again. I could just plug in date for negating it, and it's there. The last column, this is when we have like repetitives. Some of you guys have repetitive stuff, right? Like I washed the clothes, I washed them again because they weren't clean, right? So you had to redo the process, right? And sometimes our repetitive doesn't always mean repetitive. It can mean something is still that way. So I have gadenota. I sing. I'm a singer. Skadenota. I'm still a singer. I still sing. All right? I have an S. But when you have an S in the front for sadenota, you got to use a T. Sadenota. But I'm not going to harp on that too much. Like I'm just going to show them how to use it. So what I'm trying to say is like, don't always get so caught up in the technicalities of your language. And I'll share a little story about like when I went to Tuscarora, is one of the 6 nations in our confederacy, and they hold a language camp every summer. So for a week, they pick a certain topic and they'll teach you. So 1 week in the summer, it'll be all about foods and eating, and you learn all about that. This last year was all about travel, going places, being somewhere, not being there. It's a really cool camp. They keep it like they just pick a module and they go with it for the week, and you can put them all together as you go along. Even though they're and here you come in and start throwing all this other stuff to them, right? To give them more stuff to think about. So I had an aha moment because I realized, you know what? I do that to my students too. I think I'm being really cool, being like, that's an old word that comes from this, and I start giving all this other stuff, and they're just like, I'm still trying to learn that word over there. Like, that's a cool story, but are you going to test us on the story too? Because now I got to know both of these, right? So you start overcomplicating it for your students. When you start thinking in terms of linguistic rules and all that, you give your students like 5 things they got to talk about before they can actually use the language. Instead of just giving them the language, giving them the translations, giving them the context, and use it with them. Now that being said, and I'll reiterate it again, you have to know all the technical mumbo jumbo though. You should be good at that. because you want to know what you're talking about. Too, when I didn't know, I was like, I don't know, that's just how he said it. But as I developed as a teacher and understand all the little things about it, it was really empowering for me to be like, well, it's because it's got, now I can get technical because they're asking, right? Well, it has this and it has this and this drops off. And you hear it, like I'll say, like, see in this ceremony, remember in the ceremony, they always say this one word. And they're like, oh, what? That's the same word that yeah, that's the same word. It's just conjugated to him instead of her, you know? So you have these light bulb moments with them too, because you know how to do the breakdown and you know how to do the easy version. So you still have to be up there. And you build confidence in your students that they can ask you different levels of questions and you're going to be able to make it digestible to them. So building student confidence is big, you know, and that goes with like creating a safe learning environment with them too. So real quick, for 5 minutes, at your table. So, sachunyano is like tell about it. Explain it, okay? At your table, you might all be from the same program or you have different languages. Just in your language and tell people what it means, what you're trying to say. 3 things you see. 3 things that you see on this. 5 minutes and I'll call you back, so go ahead. Okay, I'll cut it a little short. If you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. If you can hear me talking, clap 3 times. Awesome. I hope you guys were able to share some little cool things about what you see there. This is another way we try to simplify things is just take a picture. So usually like one of the people that we work with, she'll go to a speaker and he'll pick like 10 things he sees on a picture. And he'll lay it all out for us. And we learn the context of what he sees and the way he sees it. But then you take that picture to another speaker, and they might pick like 6 of the same things that guy did, but then 4 other things that he didn't even talk about. He might even say, he might explain it a little bit different, right? So you can teach your students about speaker preference. You'll notice like second language learners, especially like the academic ones, they want everything in a nice little box and it has to be perfect rules and what's the rule for this, and you know, there's speaker preference out there too. There's just different ways to explain stuff and you have to teach them that like you can say it this way. One thing we do try to do is like we do stick to like maybe 1 or 2 things in the beginning for simplicity and let them know, we'll show you other ways to say this later. So this is another way just forgetting about syllable counts, about all this other stuff that's so like tricky about your language, and just show them what it means. I mean, I like that what Mr. Martinez said this morning about being outside with each other. And I was visiting Alex last night. Our language is it's visual, it's in person. You know, you have to set the context of like, you know, on a paper I have to write, imagine you're in a room with 300 people at a conference, and you know, like you got to imagine all that, right? Whereas if I just did an activity right now, we're in a room with 300 people. Let's talk about the 300 people. How many people have you met here? How many people do you know since last year? You know, what do you think they're going to have for lunch? You know, whatever you want, right? But it's all in the moment, like it's almost lunchtime. I don't have to say, pretend it's almost lunchtime at this conference you're randomly at, right? So it's real, like the composition of all your tables is different. Some have more males than females. Some you have an even count. Some is all males or, you know, whatever. That's real. That's what we talk about. So he's right, like it is hard to put stuff on paper sometimes and make that, you know, something. So I did talk a little bit about intonations, and I think I already talked about all this stuff. So I'm running out of time. But before I do, we'll talk about trimming the fat. English has a lot of words. So when you take your English expressions, you realize that your language doesn't always have to accompany. There's not like a 1-to-1 ratio of your language words to the English words, right? You know, sometimes it's just already in the whole word. So for us, we have a polysynthetic language. So just that one word says like a whole sentence at times. And for you guys too, I know some of you guys have languages just like that. There's times where it does line up, but a lot of times you don't have to. So in Seneca, I can talk about that. Yet. We don't really have a particle or anything that says yet, but you can use a stative verb, or what do they call that? Past perfect, if you guys classify it that way. So I could say, Sadekoni, have you eaten yet? Da agadekoni, I haven't eaten yet. All right. So yet is in the English. But when you look at it, there's nothing in Seneca that says that's the part that says yet. I just said if you need to use a yet expression, use a stative expression if you want to do that. With or together. We have certain things in our language where if we do like that dual column where it's like me and you or me and someone, I can say like, me and my mom went to the movies last night, right? So I'm going to put the movies first. Tkayat dahake, hwa akne, me and someone went, ne aknoe, my mom. So that we went, that's the one that denotes me and somebody. And some people, they go, like, that's the me and somebody, but not you, you know. I was like, what does that mean? What is me and somebody, but not you? Like, that's a big explanation. Me and someone, but not you really means me and my mom, me and my friend, me and my son. That's what it means, right? But you don't have to do literally like eat is me. Eat kone aknoe. That's like literally me and my mom. I don't have to say eat kone aknoe tkayat tahake wa akne. Like I don't have to do that. Because the pronoun already says, I'm already in there. It's me and someone. So I don't have to say me. I just have to name who the other someone was. So I can say too, like I was at the movies with my mom. We do have a word for with, but you don't always have to account for it in your language. Great grandparents. I was listening to Oneida elders. They do a podcast on YouTube. They asked them, what did you guys used to call your grandparents, like your great grandparents? And all those elders are like, I don't think we ever called them great grandma. They were just grandma. Anybody who was of that generation was just grandma. So that too, like that's just a fundamental thing. They're older, they're a grandma. There are no greats. At least for some of them. I don't want a blanket statement everybody. Excuses. One time we went to see the speakers, and a lot of my staff, they all found a way to snake out of it. They get intimidated. I don't think the elders are that intimidating. They're fun. They're a lot of fun. But they didn't want to go, so everybody had a reason why they couldn't go. But when we got there, they said, how come they don't come anymore? So I said, Nate, why any excuses get on? I was like, Date Gandhi, and they got one then excuses. I never learned a word for excuses. So they kind of sat there and they thought about it. They're like, excuses. And that one, he didn't take too long. He goes, we don't really have a word for excuses. You know what they're doing? They're lying. They're telling lies, right? Because that's all an excuse is. Oh, I gotta go see I gotta make a phone call. Oh, what is it? I gotta wash my hair, right? That's your favorite excuse. But it's a lie. And it was so simple to hear an elder just be like, that's just a lie. They're just lying. Oh, this is what I just talked about, you don't have to account for that. And then I put it in the language. Little thing I heard this morning, listening to a podcast, getting ready. Speaking doesn't necessarily facilitate learning. Speaking is the product of quality input and mental representation in your head. Just because you force them to say it, just because you have them read it, doesn't necessarily mean they're learning. I call it out in the wild. So when you're out in the wild and somebody's talking to you and you just got to have a thought and you got to be able to understand and be able to respond and keep the conversation going, all you have is what you have. All you have is what you have. If you know how to talk about that topic, you can talk about that topic. If you never learned how to talk about that topic, I don't care how much you read that paper about it yesterday. If you didn't internalize it up here, you're just like, I know I studied this word yesterday, but I just can't remember. Quality input. So I know we have some Anishinaabe here. They tap maple trees just like we do. And when you tap maple trees in the spring, you have to collect all this sap and boil it down to make a little bit of syrup. So you're just collecting all this sap to make a little bit of syrup. It's a lot of work. And that's kind of how language is. Language is you're giving them all this quality input. That's all the sap. And they're boiling it down to the little bit of syrup, which is their natural output. Natural conversation. All your input results in their output. Teach them how you want them to use it. If you're just doing vocabulary lists, that'll do really good if you give them a vocabulary test, right? But then we're out in the open and you're like, hey man, like, who burned that chair over there? It's like, oh, I forgot the word for chair. I know it was on my vocab test, right? Like, you didn't make it real. So I'll end with that. So Nate Wainane de Guanon, I acknowledge all of you. Put my email up here if anybody wants to get a hold of me. And like Raul said, since I filled in, I'm booked all afternoon here. So if anybody else wants to get at me, I'll be here. I appreciate all your guys' time and participating and being engaged, and look forward to meeting all of you later. Danio.